Story 1. I was an Uber driver full-time for a few years. I picked up an elderly gentleman outside a church and took him home. We talked for an hour. I could tell this man had lived through some real hardship. At some point, he asked how old I was. 24, I responded. Of course, we both made the obvious Neil Young reference. He liked that one. Then he said something I haven't forgotten. Nobody is going to tell you this, but once you turn 25, you start losing your people. And I mean losing for real. He was coming from a funeral. The crazy thing is that next year I lost 3 friends. One to brain cancer, one to a genetic defect he wasn't supposed to live past 4, and one to a heroin overdose. I didn't even know he was into hard drugs. Hug your people, take all the pictures, make all the trips, and create all the memories. At some point, that's all that's left. Story 2. No idea where I heard it, but it is a staple mantra in my day-to-day. Believe you can, decide you will. Story 3. About 9 years ago, I was 25 and decided to start studying again. I have a rather intelligent friend who used to help me with accounting, and he helped me get back into the groove of studying. One day, probably during my second year, he told me that he was proud of me. It must have been the first and only time someone said this to me. What a champion. I will never forget. Story 4. My daughter was just born. I was as happy a father as can be. My friend came over one day, and I was holding the baby in my arms. He told me, "You are going to pick her up and carry her like that one last time in the future, and you will not remember that moment." My daughter is now 20. I cannot remember the moment when I picked her up and carried her like that for the last time. He was right. Story 5. When I was 14 years old, I had a friend die from cancer. I wasn't processing it very well and couldn't understand why he had to die so young. I spoke to a priest about it, and he told me not to think of my friend as gone. He said it is like when we have an old car that keeps breaking down. The occupants in the car do not disappear, they just leave the broken down car. He told me that our body is like the car and our soul is the occupant. When the body breaks down and is no longer beneficial to the soul, it is time for the soul to leave. He said your friend isn't gone. He has just left the broken down vessel. That brought me comfort. Story 6. In grade 2, I asked a girl in my class how to spell the word, because she responded, "Big elephants can always use small elephants." It took my grade 2 brain a second to realize what she meant. I never forgot that and repeated it any time I wrote the word because, thanks, Julia. Story 7. When I was 17, my father said, "If you are gay, stay in the closet. I do not want to know." Despite being straight, that comment has never left me. Just knowing my father's love has conditions. Story 8. In 1974, my father, who had a top-secret clearance in the Army, came out of the bunker after work one day and said, "Remember these 2 words, global warming." I was 16. Story 9. My mom said, "If you were going to fill a sandwich with something, make sure you can taste it." My stepdad would always be so stingy with sandwich fillings. Story 10. Just because there is nothing to do does not mean you should do nothing. It was when I was working for a department store and a manager caught me sitting behind the register. She said, "We always need to look busy." I have been out of retail for decades now, but the idiocy of that mentality always stuck with me. I understand the need for employees to be ready when a customer needs help, but to have us just wandering aimlessly is ridiculous. Story 11. When someone has cancer, you remove it. My father, referring to my role in the family. These days, he keeps asking Mom to get me to talk to him. It has been 2 years since I removed that person from my life, and my peace is flourishing. Story 12. Not that far into my past, but a couple of years ago, I went back to school for health and nutrition, which was a total departure from my degree. I was talking about my daily walks. My instructor said, on 2 occasions, that she imagines me as a ball of sunshine walking through my neighborhood. I was very proud of that. Now, when I say hello to people or have a nice interaction after complimenting someone, I cannot help but think, I really am a ball of sunshine, a ray of light. I truly feel it. It costs nothing to smile and say hello to your fellow human beings. Story 13. This was not about me. But I said this to someone and it stuck with her for at least 6 years. When I was in second grade, I told my music teacher, "Wow, you look just like the choir teacher but with wrinkles." One day I was talking to her again in 8th grade, and she told me about it. I had completely forgotten, but she remembered it for 6 years. Story 14. There was a little bird who did not want to fly south during the winter. He stocked up on food. Once it became too cold, the bird decided to fly south. Eventually, the bird was too tired and fell out of the sky. Just as the bird landed near a cow, the cow took a big, steamy dump. A moment later, a coyote grabbed the bird. The moral of the story is that not everyone who puts you down is an enemy, and not everyone who helps you out of trouble is a friend. One of my former bosses shared this with me. Story 15 years ago, my girlfriend at the time and I had just come back from doing something with my friends. She said something like, they are not really your friends. It is more like they are acquaintances that you have known a long time. It was completely true. We had all known each other since college and continued to hang out, but for most people in the group, the connection was surface level at best. I had never stopped to think about it, but it was really clear to her because it was difficult to socialize with them as a newer person in the situation since there was very little connective tissue in the relationship. Story 16. Sometimes you outgrow your friends. Some will panic at the idea of change and try to hold you back, often wanting to live in the past. Others will show support and be happy for you as you break away and grow. We all have our lives, and true friends will always want what is best for you, not for themselves. Sometimes it is best to just let go. Story 17. When I was 19, a gentleman at the shop where I was working asked me what I was doing other than work. I told him I was just going to community college. He said, "When I was 19, my Uncle Sam sent me to the University of Vietnam. That hit me hard. I remember that statement every time I think I have it tough." Story 18. When I was in high school, I was a terrible student. I never got any failing grades, but I did the bare minimum to get by. I was not planning on going to college. I was going to join the army. In the first semester of my senior year, I found out a couple of weeks in that I did not need any more math credits to graduate. That was fine because the math teacher whose class I was in had an open disdain for me. I walked up to him and told him I was dropping his class and returned the book. In front of the class, his exact words were, "You are a loser and you will never amount to anything." I sometimes think about that when I sit comfortably at home working remotely in an engineering field. I still struggle with math, but I work with electrical engineers. They are good at math. Story 19. You have an exquisite memory, said by a coworker about 5 years ago. If it were really exquisite, I would remember the date, laugh out loud. Story 20. Every day above ground is a good day. My father was a funeral director, and these words ring true to me every day. Story 21. I told my father at about age 11 that I wanted to work for Pixar. His response was, "You have to be good to work for Pixar." Story 22. A former boss asked where the newest version of a project I was working on was. I told her I had actually sent her the latest one a couple of weeks earlier and was waiting for her feedback before continuing. She said, "How are you ever going to be great if you are always waiting for someone else to tell you what to do?" She was not mad, just spirited, and she even said as much. I was truly humbled and inspired, and I will never forget it. Story 23. You know you are not very good at that, right? On the way home after a choir performance when I was 13, I have never sung in front of anyone since. Story 24. My best friend, when my first boyfriend broke up with me and cheated on me with his ex, said, "Don't worry. He always chooses the unattractive ones no one else wants anyway." I haven't been able to shake that off ever since. Story 25. My mother told my future mother-in-law that I was mean, aggressive, and hard to get along with when I was 21 years old. I am still married to the same man 42 years later, and I adored my mother-in-law, his mother. Story 26. My math teacher told me I could probably be a garbage man. The school janitor saw me struggling and paused to help teach me some math. I am now a database engineer working with data scientists and artificial intelligence. Forget that teacher. Bless the janitor. Story 27. When I was a kid, I once stained my white shirt with juice in public, and I felt uncomfortable going shirtless since I was chubby. My dad came to me and said, "Learn to love your body. Nobody will love your body more than you, and your body is perfect just the way it is. So never feel ashamed of it. Learn to love your skin." I never suffered from body dysmorphia or anything like that, and I never felt ashamed of the way I looked. Of course, being an awkward teenager, I had my moments, but now as an adult, I have never lost confidence in my body. Nobody will make me feel negative about it because it is my body. I don't need approval or disapproval from anybody else. Story 28. When I was in my late teens, while moving out of my parents' home, my now ex-stepfather told me that he never wanted me around and that he resented how I caused conflict between him and my mother. That was over 30 years ago. Story 29. Always be adventurous. A random woman in the mountains inside a gas station said to me. It was such an odd thing to say to a stranger, so I have never forgotten. Story 30. What are you going to do about it? A friend of mine asked me that question about a dozen times during our conversations, and it stuck in my head as a deep thought question. It was a challenge in some instances, a rhetorical shrug in others, but the question keeps me on my toes. Depending on the circumstances, I realize I do have options and the ability to affect change just by answering that question. Story 31. One from a therapist. Don't should all over yourself. If all the things you should do are causing you to spiral into a pit of despair, maybe you don't actually have to do them. And you don't have to feel bad when they don't get done. Story 32. My mother told me I was not the boy they wanted, as I am female, and wished I had died or been given away because I could not even be a girl properly. I grew up as a tomboy and all my friends were boys. I was 12 at the time, and it made me uncomfortable with who I am for the rest of my life. I am 43 now, and I still think about it most days. Story 33. Always count the money you are handing to someone in front of them. Always count the money handed to you in front of the person giving it to you. Mistakes happen and people miscount sometimes. Human error is around 10%. It is much easier to correct payment on the spot than after you get home. Story 34. If you are angry or stressed, ask yourself if there is anything you can do about it. If there is not, stop wasting your energy and move on. Life is much easier and less stressful. Story 35. My high school boyfriend told me that someone told him something about me, and now he didn't trust me. He refused to tell me who said it, what it was, or what I could do to fix the situation. He didn't want to break up, just didn't trust me. It has been over 25 years, and I still have no idea. Was he fishing for me to admit something? I never cheated on him or anything like that. Up to that point, I thought we were a perfect couple. It was so infuriating and annoying that over a quarter of a century has passed, and I still wonder. I will be on my deathbed wondering what he was talking about. Story 36. It is in your nature to endure things rather than noticing when you have an opportunity to change something by taking action. Story 37. How do you know this without a Master of Science degree? I had learned some advanced statistics at my job. I was interviewing for new positions at several companies, and this question was asked multiple times. When I secured a job, I started my Master of Business Administration to obtain the degree they required to validate what I had learned on the job. My only regret was not attending the highest-ranked school that accepted me, but rather choosing the cheapest option because I only wanted the credential. The second influence was my parents. After I graduated with my Master of Business Administration, they told me, "We never thought you would go back to school. We are proud of you." My father said, "If I had known you were so smart, I would have made you get an engineering degree." I was not an eager student in high school or college. Story 38. My dad died when I was 16. A family friend and rabbi took me aside in the days after while we were sitting Shiva and said, "You're going to take this in waves. Years from now, you're going to cry yourself to sleep like it just happened because your father stays dead, and that's not getting fixed. But you do learn to live with this." A friend of mine's mom died a few months later. I told him, then another kid's dad. Years later, my other friends lost parents here and there I was repeating what Rabbi Katz told me. It sounds terrible if you don't know, but in that moment, just being told, this is what it's like without dressing it up makes it seem survivable. You know? Like, hey, it does suck, but that's okay. And when you feel that bad, it changes what you're going through a little. Also, some Jewish funerals hand out ribbons to tear so you don't have to tear your clothes. I had heard, I can get a new suit. I can't get a new dad. So my stepmom said, wear your old suit because you have to tear it. And the quote came out. My stepmom told our rabbi, whose father died the next day. The rabbi came around after he was done with his stuff and told me that he heard it and thought the same thing. So in a week, that story ruined 3 suits. Excuse me, my kids are asking why I'm tearing up. Gotta blame some allergies. Story 39. Throw enough material at the wall and some of it will stick. Alongside it being very visceral, it has always made me think and saved me some trouble. Story 40. You will harm your career by leaving to do humanitarian work instead of pursuing an academic career, said by my mentor and overheard by me. It ended up being a self-fulfilling prophecy. Story 41. My mom once said, you can't make pretty from ugly. I think she was talking about dressing up and how she felt about her own body, but sheesh, has been my go-to ever since. I'll get all dressed up, look in the mirror, and sigh, you can't make pretty from ugly. Story 42. Okay, but what do you want? I was talking to a friend about how life was not going as planned. I was struggling with living up to everyone's expectations and had put unrealistic expectations on myself. After letting me vent, she asked me the question above. I was speechless because I had no idea. It dawned on me that I had never thought about what I wanted, let alone that I had a say in any of it. I was living my life for other people. People were using me for whatever they could get from me, and I was being the good daughter, employee, and so on. I was used to my parents, my boss, my coworkers, everyone in my life telling me what I should do and who I should be. When faced with the question, I had to honestly respond that I never really realized that was an option. Story 43. Not directly to me, but to my mother in my presence. Your son is just stupid and lazy, said my first grade teacher. Story 44. When I was about 15, some friends and I were at a ball field, and I don't remember why exactly, but we and another group were talking badly about each other. Suddenly, a girl about 7 years old said to me, "Hey, you fool in the red hat." The tone she used felt like a sucker punch right between the eyes. I will never forget it. I am 43 now. Story 45. I remember walking to a club downtown with my friend over a decade ago when I was about 22. She was very attractive, and I think I was too. Guys walked by us and said, "Damn, she's hot." About her, and "She's kinda hot." About me. Fast forward to now. She has been a worn-out bartender at the neighborhood bar, and I am shining bright. Still hurts, though. Obviously, she had nothing to do with the comment. It's just funny how things pan out. Story 46. I used to be pretty sarcastic, and my friends and I always liked trading barbs with each other. Despite that, I was and still am really close with a core group of friends. We just knew what we were about, and some of them described me as having a magnetic personality. One of them once said that I was like a magnet with sharks attached, and I will never forget that for some reason. Story 47. In response to something I said that I have forgotten, at a meeting where a man and some others were deciding if I would be allowed to do the job I had gone into tens of thousands of debt to learn. That sounds like something you should talk to a therapist about. What I did not say, I did. She told me my self-analysis was very impressive. What I probably did say, okay. I eventually got permission to do the job, but I still want to go back and yell at him. I am fairly sure he is dead now. Story 48. My friends do not like you because you talk too much about yourself. After I got married, my new sister-in-law started to include me in her friend group outings. We would go out to dinner, hang out at someone's house, and even take a girls' trip to Las Vegas. One day, she just said that to me. I was shocked because I am normally pretty quiet and introverted. I am usually the person looking for a small entry into a conversation, which never comes. So I just sit and wait for the night to end. Honestly, I think it was her way of saying I could not hang out with them anymore. Story 49. My mother's last coherent words to me, as I was rushing out of her room to go downstairs to work, were, "I wish you did not have to work so much." Story 50. The day my parents dropped me off at college, as they were leaving, my mom looked me in the eye and said, "Don't take nonsense from anybody." It was the best advice I ever got. The times I did not heed that advice were to my detriment. A few years ago, my daughter started college. When I dropped her off, I made sure to give her the same advice. Story 51. Twice in the last couple of years, different women have said they really like my glasses. I am never getting new frames. Story 52. You are the next best thing, my best friend, to me about a girl I was dating who liked my other friend. Story 53. I had lost my well-paying oil field job and was unemployed for 1.5 years. It was awful. We moved back to where we grew up and my wife got a job followed by myself, but she made more money than I did. One night, a very feminist friend of hers said, "You're making more money than your husband? You go, girl." I never considered it a competition, and it blows my mind that anyone would think like that. My wife and I are a team when it comes to finances. It was strangely hurtful. Story 54. I told my boss at the superstore that he could tell me if I did something right for a change, and he said, "When you do anything right, I'll let you know." He looked like an angry Mario, but his name was Luigi, and he used a first-generation iPhone ringtone that sounded like a 1950s phone, just to finish painting the picture. Story 55. Literally every negative interaction I have ever had in my life starting at age 3. Super fun up in here. Story 56. It's a famous quote, but it has stuck with me since I first heard it. Nobody can make you feel inferior without your permission. You choose whose opinions matter to you, the people whose voices matter in your life, and let the rest of the noise roll off like water off a duck's back. If someone doesn't like your clothes or your face, why do you care? Don't let it matter, don't let it ruin your day, because they don't matter in your sphere. I want my kids to remember that. Story 57. After observing someone doing something bafflingly stupid, my grandfather said, "He doesn't have the good sense that God gave to a ham sandwich." Still one of my favorite phrases. Story 58. I was probably 19. The girl I was interested in said, "It is not socially acceptable to be short and a man." Yeah, we never went out after that first date. I am 49 and have been happily married for 25 years. The joke is on her. Story 59. In high school, someone told me I looked like Orlando Bloom. It was the best compliment I could have received because I thought I was uglier than dirt. I have had a few people in my adult years tell me I look like Pedro Pascal. I will never forget any of those. Story 60. A workmate said, "You are the only one who comes in the morning and says good morning to everyone on your way to your desk. Things like this matter." Story 61. Packed up my entire life to move to another state to get married. Ended up filing for divorce a year later. He was having an affair and told me I was just a convenience for him at the time. I returned to my home state and never regretted that decision. Story 62. Let not perfect be the enemy of good. We were trying to organize a yearly music community event but kept encountering naysayers pointing out problems. Then an old man spoke up and said it. Story 63. I was in a Home Depot store looking at rope. I want to build a bed frame and suspend it from the ceiling to have more floor space and make it easier to sweep and clean underneath. While I was looking at the various ropes they sold, a man, maybe around 40, walked by my aisle, glanced my way, then walked backward and said to me, "You're not going to kill yourself, are you?" I have a very dark sense of humor, so I just laughed and said, "No." He replied, "Too much work, huh?" and walked away. I still laugh. I might have lost my soulmate that day. Story 64. When I was about 15, I heard my pediatrician say to my mother that the way she judges whether a teenage girl is overweight or should be concerned is by taking their height starting at 5 feet. If you are 5 feet, you should weigh 100 pounds, and then add 5 pounds per inch for the perfect weight. Meaning that at 5 feet 6 inches, I should have weighed 130 pounds. I think I weighed about 142 pounds. I was not terribly overweight, maybe just slightly chubby. Let me tell you, That started me on the spiral of a very severe eating disorder. 3 months later, I weighed 120 pounds, and you could see every bone in my body. I am 32 now, and I still hear her voice every time I get on the scale. I am 5 feet 7 inches now, and 135 pounds is my ideal weight. Even if I look too thin, her voice is all I hear. Be careful what you say about weight in front of a child. Story 65. I had an excellent manager early in my career. Here are a couple of valuable lessons he shared with me that I still live by more than 20 years later. You can have it good, you can have it fast, or you can have it cheap. Choose two. You did not make a mistake. Our process allowed the mistake to happen. Story 66. I worked at a museum in my mid-20s as their public relations director. A sweet little old lady interviewed me for an article for their newsletter and called me a mere slip of a girl. I was both irritated at having my professional qualifications described in a somewhat sexist, somewhat belittling way, but also charmed by the old-fashioned expression. It means young and thin, which I was. Now that I am neither, I remember it more fondly. Story 67. I'm glad I got to see you today. You have such a wonderful laugh. This was said to me by a professor I worked with during some study assignments on a day that had been very difficult. I had fallen down concrete stairs rushing across campus to get a green book, as the usual source had stopped carrying them the previous week. Then, I had to take the test in the book that had blood on it from my scuffed-up hands. I was hit in the head by my whole backpack when I fell, tore my headphone cable, ripped my jeans, and twisted an ankle. It was objectively not a good day, but that comment made everything turn around. Story 68. Don't go to town tonight with those boys. 15 years later, I am still an alcoholic, in and out of jail, detox, and treatment centers, living on the street at 31 years old. Always listen to your mom. She knew what she was saying to me, but I just wanted instant gratification. She wanted me to have a future. Story 69. A compliment I will always remember. I was at a gas station and a black woman looked at me, smiled, and said, "My, aren't you a big, beautiful woman?" This happened about 15 years ago. Story 70. Fifth grade teacher. The only permanent thing in the world is change. You will need to get comfortable with change. Story 71. I was dating a guy for 8 months. He was toxic, but I did not see it at the time for many reasons. He was my first love, but he was very inconsistent. Looking back, he was probably breadcrumbing. One day he invited me to hang out for New Year's. We were cuddling on the couch, and he said, unprompted, "I love you." A few minutes later, he seemed to have some clarity because he said, "You know, when I said, 'I love you,' I did not mean it. I was just kidding." Story 72. My father passed away in April 2024 when I was 17. I messaged his girlfriend recently, and she said, "He wanted to see you, hear your voice, and know about you." We did not have a relationship. His passing is incredibly complex, especially since he was horrible when I was a toddler but had apparently grown and changed. Story 73. I don't know why this felt like such an important thing to hear that stuck with me for so long, but I was talking to a woman my mom's age and mentioned my fears that I don't actually deserve the friends I have. The people around me who keep saying they love me. This one friend who always treated me with so much love and care said this, "Do you trust her?" Yes, absolutely. So, if you trust her, the first thing you need to do is trust her opinion of you. If she says you're worth it, you are. I still try and quote this with other people because it just hit me profoundly. So simple yet so strong. Story 74. Don't let anyone else's opinion write your story. It hit me hard then and still fuels me when self-doubt creeps in. Story 75. When I was 12, I was the weird, goofy-looking kid in my class and got bullied daily. One day, a girl in the class who did not bully me but was not a close friend either told me I had perfect eyebrows. She wished hers looked that good and asked my secret. I had never plucked, waxed, or used any makeup on them at the time. They were completely natural. It has been 30 years, and I do not think I will ever forget her kindness when I really needed it. A few years ago, She found me on social media and sent me a picture she had of me and my best friend at a school dance in 7th grade. He passed away shortly after college, so that picture meant a lot to me. That girl and I lead very different lives, so we did not become close friends. But it is nice to know she is still the kind person she was when we were kids. She has 3 children now. I hope they are just like her. Story 76. When I was 12, I was the weird, goofy-looking kid in my class and got bullied daily. One day, a girl in the class who did not bully me but was not a close friend either told me I had perfect eyebrows. She wished hers looked that good and asked for my secret. I had never plucked, waxed, or used any kind of makeup on them at the time. They were completely natural. It has been 30 years, and I do not think I will ever forget her kindness at a time when I really needed it. A few years ago, she found me on social media and sent me a picture she had of me and my best friend at a school dance in 7th grade. He passed away just after college, so that picture meant a lot to me. That girl and I lead very different lives, so we did not become close friends. But it is nice to know she is still the kind person she was when we were kids. She has 3 children now. I hope they are just like her. Story 77. Years ago, one of my best friends had a brother who died. This friend called me to let me know because I knew his brother and honestly because I think he was just trying to do something to help his mom. I made the mistake of asking him, "What happened?" He became upset and asked, "Why does everyone keep asking that? Why does it matter? He's gone, that is what matters." That day, I learned that you never ask how someone died when hearing about it from one of their loved ones. You just need to offer your condolences. If you want to ask a question, ask what you can do to help. Story 78. When I was a child, my father told me that beetroot were sheep's testicles. For a laugh. I have known for over 30 years that this was not true. I still have never eaten one. When I mentioned this to my father a few years ago, he said he did not remember it, but I could see he was a little proud of himself. He admitted it was exactly the kind of story he used to tell us, my sister and me. Story 79. I was in college at the time, stopped to put gas in my typical college student car. My grandfather pulled up at the pump opposite me and got out. He asked if I was still driving that old car. Then he told me that I should get a real job so I could get a real car. I did not say anything, just paid for my gas and drove away. He was unpleasant, but that remark still nags at me. Story 80. Dated a really attractive woman once. I asked her what it was like being the attractive woman. She paused and said, "Honestly, it's 95% genetics, 5% upkeep. Brilliant to this day." Story 81. An angel appeared in the guise of my manager's wife many years ago and said, "Your time will come later in life. Hold on to that." Many years later, it is true. Story 82. My high school principal used to always say, "If you fail to plan, you plan to fail." I have always remembered this and used to disregard those words. But as I have grown, I have realized there is nothing more important than being prepared and planning for success. Story 83. I am a nurse. At my first job, I was changing linen on one of those airbeds used for people with quadriplegia. I said to my preceptor, "Oh, I wish I could lie in this, just to feel what it was like." She responded, "Be careful what you wish for." That haunted me for years. Story 84. It was the first time I cared what girls thought of me when I was about 12. I remember being on a horse during a trail ride and thinking of old Dudley Do-Right from the cartoons. I said loudly, "Let's go, horse," in my Dudley Do-Right voice. 2 girls about 20 feet away, both on their horses, started laughing, and one yelled, "Oh, a queer!" I am now 69 years old and remember it like it was this morning. Story 85. When I was in school, my dad told me, "People don't bully you for no reason. You must have done something to deserve it, asshole." Story 86. There are a few variations of this one. You do not stop playing because you get old. You get old because you stop playing. Story 87. I was told by a girl in a spring college course years ago that she thought I was smart, although I was easygoing. That motivated me to study hard until I decided to switch my major. My positive actions towards her from that day until she graduated college made her think about me in a more than friends way. I found out about it from my brother when they were working together as auditors on a team. Story 88. New Year's Party 2024. My parents invited their friends over for dinner. One of their friends gave the rest of the group attitude because he worked at Suncor Energy. I told him that I applied to the company, and he said, "Don't you dare apply to Suncor Energy again. I'm an adult with a positive attitude and mindset. I will apply to any company of my choice. If he comes to my house in the near future, I will give him a piece of my mind, and I will email the Human Resources Department of Suncor Energy to tell them everything. I will also tell his children everything." Story 89. The first time I heard the expression, living rent-free in someone else's head, I could already hear my gears begin to grind. I mean, does anyone pay rent to live in someone else's head? Since then, I have heard it countless times. It still does not make sense. Story 90. A very close friend of mine told me, "Every party has a pooper and periodic sheep, is it?" Which is tied to when my high school boyfriend and I broke up. He told me it was like cutting off a finger to keep the disease from spreading to the arm. Story 91. I was in a technology meeting after the company was purchased. I had met the division chief information officer previously for a week at a meeting about integrating our systems, as we were merging ours together into a larger parent company. He brought all his team members, architects, and others. We were in a cramped meeting room. His team kept going on and on. I didn't say anything because I was just the local information technology person as far as they were concerned. After the third time of them going in circles, the chief information officer looked at me and said, "Okay, operations person, you're the smartest person in the room. How do we do this?" I have never seen a room full of technology professionals so stunned. I took a moment to recover from him dismissing his entire team and took over the meeting. With a fresh flipboard page and 20 minutes later, we had a plan ready. Our company merged completely into the overall parent company a year ahead of the other project his team was handling. They had started a year before us, and our environment was more complex. Even now, 14 years later, it still feels surreal. Now, I am in a top technology role in a company after a spin-off, ranked in the top 50 of the Fortune 500. That one statement helped my imposter syndrome, and I remind myself of it to trust my skills and judgment. Story 92. The phrase lives rent-free in your head is so overused now that it lives rent-free in my head. Damn it. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.